Hi everyone, I wonder how you're all doing at the moment, how you're coping with all the different lockdowns and the guddle we seem to be in. You'll be pleased to know that today I'm not going to talk about COVID. I'm going to talk about today's reading, and particularly a phrase in the reading that we have from Matthew that says, "Give to Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." This verse is one of those that's extremely well known, although usually in the King James Version you probably know it as "render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and render to God the things that are God's." And it's probably associated in your head with paying taxes or something like that. The passage takes place at a time in Jesus' ministry when he was becoming increasingly unpopular with the Pharisees and with the Herodians. Now, these two groups didn't have very much in common with each other, but one uniting factor was their dislike of Jesus. So they put aside their many differences for a moment, and they come together to pose Jesus a question that they hope will put him between a rock and a hard place. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? If he says yes, the taxes are lawful, he'll offend the Pharisees and the many in the crowds who hate the Roman Empire and its occupation of their land, not to mention the poor who are especially burdened by the tax. They can't wiggle out of it. How unlike our current system. However, if he says it's not lawful, the Herodians, who support Rome, will report back to those in power that Jesus is speaking against them. It's a trap. And it seems that whatever Jesus answers, it's going to be the wrong answer. Jesus, being Jesus, rewrites the question. First, he asks to see a coin, pointing out subtly that his pockets are empty, whereas those who ask the questions have no problem finding the money. And he asks them a question. Whose head is on this and whose inscription? Well, it's the emperor's. So Jesus says to them, "Give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." The trap is avoided. But that's not all that this passage is about. It's not just about giving taxes. It's about something more than that. If you are a believer, a Christian, a follower of God, then you belong to God, and he belongs to you. For the sake of his son Israel, he has called us by name, even if we do not know fully who God is. It says that in our reading from Isaiah 45 today. So we give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's, and we belong to God. Yet we live in this world. We are called to give to the authorities of this world the things that we are legally bound to give. But we're also called to give to God all that is his. The Pharisees and the Herodians recognized the coin as belonging to Caesar by what it looked like, by the inscription on it, the weight of it, by what you could do with it. It was a genuine article. How will people recognize that we belong to God? If people look at us, will they see the work of God in our lives? Does the inscription, what we say, how we speak, indicate that we belong to God? What things in our lives are we placing weight or value in? Do those reflect God? What are we doing with our lives? Those are big questions, so let's just break it down a bit. Belonging to God means belonging fully to him. There should be no such thing as a life half given to God. It's a bit like giving someone a half-eaten chocolate bar. What can we point to in our lives that we know God has been involved in? I can look back over my life and, in retrospect, identify times and places where to me God has been very present. From places where cars broke down and who was around, to accidental meetings that led to the direction I was taking changing. Look back over your life. Where has God been involved? Find some examples. What does our inscription, what does our conversation say about our faith? Do we speak about God, or is it just a private thing? Why do we, or don't we, want to share it? I'm lucky and unlucky. I wear a dog collar. People expect me to speak of God, but people also listen to the language I use, to what I speak of, to the way I speak, because they recognize this dog collar represents faith in God, and they expect me to speak and act in a particular way. I try to act, speak in a way which represents the faith of God, with love, with mercy, with consideration, without bias. I don't always succeed, but I try. What language do you use? What words? Do you speak openly and honestly with mercy and love? Or are you always critical or bad-tempered? What does your inscription say about who you belong to? What do you do? What do we do with our money or our time or our energy? And how does that represent our faith? I believe in the biblical principle of tithing, so I give away 10% of my income. It's a principle I've lived by all of my adult life. And no matter how little or how much I get, 10% is given away, most of it back to the church. It has not always been comfortable or easy doing so. But to me, this is one of the things, what it means to live as though I belong to God. It's a statement of belonging and a statement of gratitude. Even before I was ordained, I tried to tithe my time to God, to make sure that at least 10% was for God to use in His service. That's involved working with the homeless, in soup kitchens, in schools, in churches, in choirs, and so on. Again, it's not always been comfortable or easy doing so. How about your energy? Energy is not always something I have in great supply at the moment. As many of you know, I have chronic fatigue alongside various other things. But what energy I have, I try to make the best possible use of, so that it is given to God. I try, note that word again, to be accountable to God for what I do with the resources He gives me. What use do you put your resources to? What do you do with your income, your time, your energy, your possessions? How accountable are you to God? Jesus tells us in this passage to pay our taxes, but Jesus also tells us that we can tell who or what something belongs to by its characteristics. So what does our life say about who we belong to? Does it mark us out as belonging to God? And what are we planning on doing about it? Amen.